From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is Road Signs. Here is your host, Seth Clevenger.
Thank you for listening to Road Signs, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. In this episode, we're going to explore the evolution of transportation management systems. Motor carriers and freight brokers rely on their TMS software to run their operations and handle functions such as dispatching, load matching, driver management, billing, and more. Increasingly, these systems are incorporating the latest advances in information technology, including cloud-based platforms, business process automation, data analytics, and even artificial intelligence. But how are these advances in technology reshaping the TMS market? We'll set out to answer that question in this episode. Later in the program, we're going to speak with David Bell, co-founder and CEO of CloneOps, to talk about TMS systems and our takeaways from the Manifest 2025 Supply Chain Innovation Conference in February. But first, to learn more about the evolution of TMS systems, I'm very excited to bring in Nick Darman, founder and CEO of Alvys, a cloud-based TMS for carriers and brokers. So the TMS market is evolving in line with some of the big technology trends we've seen in recent years. Of course, that includes the rise of cloud-based platforms, a lot of focus increasingly on business process automation. Of course, data analytics is very big, and also increasingly artificial intelligence. So Nick, I'd love to hear your take on how these advances in technology are changing the TMS space.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I started this Alvys journey, what I've discovered back then was there were probably over 200 different TMSs, at least the ones that I've known and counted. So getting into this industry where building a TMS has a very high risk. In other words, you have a very, very low chance of succeeding. But at the same time, you have a lot of this noise in the industry. Everyone is trying to do a TMS. Every big major company are trying to build their own proprietary technology. But for some reason, no one has actually delivered this breakthrough technology. So when I started Alvys, the one thing that I wanted to make sure I do is create or deliver the breakthrough technology to our customers. I knew it was going to be very difficult because there is a lot of noise. So I had to do something that's different. First off, you have a lot of the cloud entrance technology. You have a lot of experience already in our space that know how to build in the cloud, which is a positive thing. In other words, you're able to source for more employees, more programmers who know what they're doing when it comes to building technology in the cloud. So that's a positive thing. But second of all, you really need someone who knows how to build this kind of technology in the cloud, knows how to build industrial grade platforms. So what I wanted to do was to find someone with this kind of experience, someone who has built in the past, who has scaled the technology to levels never seen before. So I found our CTO, Leo, who was the first engineer at Jet. And as you probably know, Jet was sold to Walmart for $3.3 billion. And so we partner up together. So the one thing that happened at Alvys was you have someone like myself who has the experience building a logistics company, knows every single detail on the front line. And then you have someone like Leo who knows how to build industrial grade platforms. And so we basically partner up. And when you do so, that was probably the secret sauce, one of the secret sauce as to why we are so successful.
In logistics, every second counts. But what if your phone operations worked as fast as your supply chain? Meet CloneOps, AI-powered virtual agents that handle high-volume inbound and outbound calls with speed, accuracy, and zero downtime. Fewer delays, faster response times, and smarter workflows. CloneOps.ai frees your team from repetitive calls so they can focus on what drives growth. Ready to turn it on? CloneOps.ai, always turned on. You mentioned at the top just the number of TMS systems out there, right? I mean, this is a pretty crowded field these days. There's a lot of competition. That includes a lot of startup companies and new names, right? Alvys is one, but, in the last several years, there's more and more companies that have entered the space, a lot of new entrepreneurs, developers that are working on new products. So maybe just spend a little bit more time talking about how you're trying to differentiate yourselves at Alvys, given just how busy, how crowded, and how many options are on the market for carriers and brokers.
Yeah. So one thing is for sure, when I started to build, our proprietary technology for my logistics company back in the days, I never knew it was going to be so difficult. So I'll give you an example. The reason why I went out and formed a tech team to build my own technology was because I was tired switching TMSs for my company, and my employees grew tired of it. And so I was thinking to myself, well, how difficult this would be. This is not very difficult. It makes total sense what we need to do. And so if you actually give clear instructions to our engineers, it should be pretty straightforward. Come to find out, after 3 years of building this technology, I realized why a lot of people are failing. It's very easy to build technology, let's say, in the first phase. Let's imagine that we have about 100 modules that we need to complete. First 10 modules, they work flawlessly. Everything is fine. Everyone is happy. It's when you start adding more and more modules where things start breaking. And that's when you need principled approach to engineering. And so what's happened, and I would assume that's what's happening with all the TMSs to start. In the beginning, they're actually cranking. Everything is fine. But then as they keep on adding different features, and you need to add a feature, otherwise no one is going to use your technology. You cannot just be a glorified spreadsheet. You need to have all 100 features or modules intertwined together to make sure this TMS is actually going to work for your customers. And so you cannot stop. You have to continue. But as you continue, everything starts breaking. There's a lot of bugs. And so what engineers are spending time on is not building new features. 80% of their time is spent on fixing bugs. And that's actually very detrimental to the business. So what we've done different, in our technology was to make sure that we follow a very strict guidelines when it comes to coding. Everyone has to have a certain protocol to make sure no one actually gets too creative and does what they want. And so that's one of the things that we've done. Now, when it comes to other technologies such as standalone tech, visibility products, different AI agents, those are very different. And in my opinion, they're much easier to build because they're standalone products. But when you start adding everything into a TMS, that's where I believe things are. Everyone is falling short, and that's my opinion.
Yeah, and the TMS really is that central hub, right? I mean, it connects all the pieces, all the additional applications and systems that companies choose to adopt, kind of flow through that TMS and sort of the heartbeat of the IT side of the operation. You and I were both at Manifest this year. And I bring that up because it felt like every other sentence you heard the term AI pop up. So much hype about artificial intelligence. Recent years, of course, a lot of that's driven by, generative AI and large language models. In our industry, we also see the use of machine learning, to improve efficiency and automate manual processes. Now, since that show is still pretty fresh in our minds, Nick, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you see AI adoption playing out in the transportation industry, and what do you see as the potential opportunities, and what are the potential stumbling blocks?
So, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of hype when it comes to AI, and we purposely didn't want to build any AI products prematurely. What we wanted to focus on was creating a proper data structure, because AI is a function of accurate data.
Mhm.
If you don't have accurate data, AI is just not going to work. And, and so that's what we spent a lot of our time on building proper data where everything flows properly. A lot of these AI companies, they depend on system of records. They have to either plug into a TMS or an ERP in order to make sure they deliver the value. And they're great. They know what they're doing. Whether there's going to be the ROI, we have yet to see. I think it's too early to tell. I do believe out of so many that are entering the space, someone is going to figure out. But I will say that our team has probably the highest chance of succeeding building AI because we have all the data. All the data flows through our platform, and as a result, when we deploy, an AI product such as, let me just give you an example. One of the things that a lot of the customers are asking us for is to create a more robust reporting system. So instead of creating these reports, you might as well just ask a question: who is my most profitable truck? Instead of running a report on all the trucks, when you ask the question, the system should be able to actually source through all kinds of data and surface, top three most profitable trucks. Who is my laziest employee? The system should be able to see all the activities that each employee is doing, and it should be able to actually rank and give an answer. So this kind of AI product, that's just one example that a lot of customers are asking for. Yeah, we are going to build it, and we probably have the highest chance of succeeding instead of someone plugging in to our database, trying to figure out how to navigate our TMS and have just as a standalone product. In my opinion, since we have all the data, we should be able to deliver a much better product, more robust, and having that ROI. The most important thing is what's the ROI instead of the hype.
Yeah, certainly something we'll be watching, closely these coming few years, to see how, what catches on and what succeeds in the marketplace. Shifting back to, more specifically looking at, TMS systems and the TMS market. In recent years, we've seen a growing number of niche TMS systems enter the space that are designed for, let's call it a specific segment of the transportation industry. Examples include port drayage, liquid bulk haulers, for example.
Mhm.
At the same time, the larger TMS vendors have been offering more configurability, so customers can tailor the system, to their own unique operations. So just would love to get your take on this. Do you see the industry moving toward more adaptable, flexible TMS systems that customers can really mold to their specific business needs, rather than call it like a one size fits all approach?
That's a good question. Um, in my experience, in my humble experience, I was amazed to find out that there's 100 different ways to pay a driver. And what we've done, especially when we were starting, we had to build all kinds of workflows just around paying a driver. And that's how we were able to generate a lot of traction. We have become a customizable TMS in order to gain traction. Obviously, that was very expensive to do, but we needed the traction in order to see how the system operates at volume. But now that we have actually gone on the other side, we are recommending to our customers what's the best way, what's the best practice.
Yeah.
So while they have an idea or they have their own workflows before onboarding Alvys, what we are starting to discover, due to the fact that we have so many different workflows already built, we are recommending the best practices, and they're starting to adapt those practices. So this is what we're trying to do. Instead of actually customize every single workflows, that sometimes just doesn't make sense, but they want it that way because they got used to it. Either they developed certain processes, or maybe they used a different platform that required them to go around the hoops, and as a result, everyone got used to those processes. What we're trying to do here at Alvys is to recommend the best practice, and I'm surprised a lot of people, a lot of new customers, they are willing to adapt these new practices. Before, no way. When we were starting out, they would just basically tell us, bluntly, "Hey, you either have this or I don't onboard Alvys." So we were basically at the mercy of, our customers. We would customize our platform. But something shifted in the industry. I believe we are starting we've become such a deep and wide platform that everyone is actually wanting to learn more and see what's the best practice to pay a driver in the most efficient and effective way.
Yeah. For sure, I can see how complex this gets, especially if you have customers in many different use cases, and you're configuring or customizing the product to fit all these different needs. There's certainly some potential drawback to that, given the complexity and uh, all the different ways just to pay a driver, like you mentioned. Uh, I think it's also interesting to think about the different needs and requirements of different sizes and types of transportation businesses. So, based on your experience, also as a person who had also launched an asset based or an asset light uh, brokerage as well at one point. What TMS features do you find are most important for carriers versus brokers, and also for small, medium, and large businesses? What are the commonalities, and what are maybe the unique needs or priorities for different types of companies?
Yeah. So it's not one single feature. It's many combined together, and how those features work together holistically. So, depending on how the system is designed, you're going to be able to deliver this ROI where you spend less time, I don't know, building loads or navigating through the system, or you don't need as many people to process your driver payroll, and all that depends on how each feature works. So when people ask me what's the feature that's makes you stand apart, I always say, well, it's more or less about the concept. It's more or less about how does your platform work holistically as a whole, not just at one feature. Because let's just give an example right now. Let's say, for instance, and I'm sure a lot of TMSs have this configured, where they could post their trucks, to load boards. So you could actually claim, "Hey, I have this feature where you could post trucks on low boards." So let's dive deeper on this. You could either go at each truck level, and post that truck. So you could do it one by one, one by one. And if you have 100 trucks, that's a lot of wasted time. Or you could actually configure it automatically where uh, the loads or actually the trucks are being posted when it delivers. So, for example, when the load delivers 2 days from now in Miami, Florida, this truck is going to be posted 2 days from now out of Miami, Florida. More than anything, even if this load if this truck is already covered and you already have a load for this truck out of Miami, Florida, the system should still post that load because you never know what other load could come in into your pipeline. And then you could swap that load that you thought the truck that's delivering in Miami, Florida, you could take that load and give it to another truck. So you always need the pipeline uh, working. You always need new freight, new loads into the system. So one way to post is to manually go at every truck level and post those trucks. Another way is having the system just post for every load when it's delivering. So do you see how this one feature could be misleading? And by the way, if you think about it, there are so many different things that you need to do to actually deliver both of these features. But on surface, it's called posting trucks.
Hmm.
But the way it's actually posting trucks is a completely different story. And to us, what's more important is not just posting a truck. To us is how can we do it at scale in such a way where we actually enrich the company. We help them actually navigate through freight quickly so they're able to create that perfect match. And so it's all about different processes and workflows instead of just one particular feature. That's a very deep topic, by the way, and a lot of folks are asking us, what makes you be so different? It's not about a particular feature; it's
Mhm.
about how it works.
In logistics, every second counts. But what if your phone operations worked as fast as your supply chain? Meet CloneOps, AI-powered virtual agents that handle high-volume inbound and outbound calls with speed, accuracy, and zero downtime. Fewer delays, faster response times, and smarter workflows. CloneOps.ai frees your team from repetitive calls so they can focus on what drives growth. Ready to turn it on? CloneOps.ai, always turned on. Of course, another important way of fitting a TMS into a transportation operation is, all the integrations. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but since the TMS is that central hub of a transportation company's IT stack, it's connecting with other software, other applications that the business is using. Whether it's telematics for the trucks, routing, optimization. So maybe just speak to that integration challenge. You see so many different vendors in this space, so many different technology developers, and it seems like every year you see a whole new wave of them. How do you handle that challenge of integrating with all these companies, especially as a newer TMS vendor in the space?
Um, well, we've actually grown as a result of having a robust integration. And by the way, just FYI, we have over 1,000 customers, which
Hmm.
is arguably one of the largest TMSs in our space, even though we just entered the market. But in order for us to be able to grow this fast, integrations were supposed to be done correctly. And so the traditional way of integrating with different platforms is to basically have this brute force approach where you have engineers integrate one platform at a time. Let's say, for example, you want to integrate with an ELD provider. Then you go to the second ELD provider and you integrate that one. What we've done that's different, we created a plugin approach. And to create a plugin approach is a lot more difficult to do than integrating each integration separately. It requires a lot of thought. It requires different methodologies, and our engineers, they know a lot more than I do. But all I hear is, in order for us not to waste time and be efficient with our time, we have to create plugins. So what that means, the next ELD that we need to integrate with, it's going to be so much faster because we have
Mhm.
a proper plugin. So our entire system is built on plugin approach. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to have over. I think we have over 200 integrations already, right? That's that's I mean, if you think about it, we've done it in less than a year and a half. That's so much, but that also speaks to the way we approach our engineering processes. It's very interesting. I guess I could compare engineers and the way engineers build platforms in similar way when I'm asked about. So what's the feature that sets you apart? Well, it's not really about the feature. It's about how you create those processes to be able to deliver the result as quick as possible. Same with engineers. Well, it's not about building a particular integration. It's about how these engineers, when they work together, create this plug-in approach so that we're able to integrate other integrations at scale.
Yeah. So another topic I always like to bring up in these conversations when we're talking about IT systems and technology in the industry is cybersecurity, right? Cyber attacks have become a more prevalent concern, and we've seen some high profile attacks over the years. A lot of ransomware attacks in the trucking industry that are quite severe and can be extremely disruptive and damaging to a business. So I'd love to hear from you, how you're working with your customers to help them keep their operations and their data secure. Also, just your best cybersecurity advice for IT leaders in our industry, given how important that topic has become.
Well, I would definitely recommend to work with top companies when it comes to cybersecurity, such as CrowdStrike and whatnot. They are the companies that would help you navigate to make sure that everything is secure. That's probably my best advice. Um, uh, I mean, everything is changing all the time. You just patch one door and the door is open
Right.
for a lot of these people who are trying to hack the systems. And companies like CrowdStrike, I believe they're so experienced. They know, and they know exactly what's going on. They know the trend. They're at the forefront of this. And as a result, partnering up with companies with a proper cybersecurity company in your cloud infrastructure is what uh, makes a system very powerful, and you're protecting all of your customers' data.
Yeah. Another topic I wanted to get to before we wrap up here, it's been top of mind for the industry really for a few years now, is the freight market. And past few years have been tough for the industry. It's been soft rates for carriers and thin margins for brokers. Um, a lot better if you're a shipper, right? But of course, it can be hard for companies to invest in technology when they're strapped for cash, even though that technology is often what they need to become more efficient in a down market. What have you seen? Have you seen a pullback in tech investment because of market conditions these past few years? Or do you see it creating more urgency for businesses to really improve their IT and improve their processes, or probably some of both?
Yeah, a combination of both for sure. But what I've discovered, so first of all, everyone, just to kind of summarize how everyone thought about the cycles. And every time you have a lot of trucks entering the system or the ecosystem, the rates go down. And so the logic in the past was you just need to wait it out so enough carriers, small carriers, go out of business, and the rates will correct themselves. That's the logic. But then we entered the space of offshore, nearshore. Right now, all of a sudden, more people or more carriers have a lot more cash in their pockets, and they are able to weather the storm. for a much longer time. So carriers wouldn't just exit the market as fast as they would in the past. So that's the second component that's, I believe, contributed to the fact that this cycle has stayed down for this long. What I have discovered, there's a third one that no one really talks about. And the reason I found out about it is because of shippers who are using our platform with their private fleet. So by the way, as probably everyone knows, shippers also have private fleets, and they contacted us to onboard their private fleet. A lot of shippers, they're onboarding their private fleet with Alvys. And so I started to ask the questions, hey, so what's going on? What's the trend? And all of the shippers are basically singing the same song. We have begun buying a lot more trucks because we couldn't afford to pay those kind of rates when it happened during COVID. So
Yeah.
that's another interesting trend why, or another interesting component why the freight market is actually staying this low for this long, is the private fleets started to actually multiply. Have you ever heard about this? This is, and I'm actually taking all this information from our customers, our shipper
Hmm.
customers who have their private fleet. So I think there's three main points, and everyone talks about the two. One is too many trucking companies have entered the space, and therefore we need to wait until some of them exit. But the second one, less popular, but it's obvious, there's a lot of offshore new shore capabilities, and therefore you save a lot more money on employees, and hence you have more cash in your pockets, and you're able to weather the storm for a longer time. And the third one that no one talks about it, and I discovered through our customers, is the fact that a lot of these shippers started to buy private fleets, and as a result they're able to control the market rates. So it's a very interesting dynamic in my discovery.
Yeah, Nick, it is in line with a lot of the conversations I've had in the last couple of years. And it's almost counterintuitive, but you'd almost think that a lot of shippers that operate private fleets, might look to shift back to for hire, given the softer rates and capacity is abundant and available at competitive prices. But I think that the experiences of the pandemic, the huge surge in demand coming out of the pandemic, and all the supply chain disruptions and shortages we saw at that time really left their mark, and it's had some staying power. And more shippers do want to take their transportation destiny in their own hands, so to speak. We have seen plenty of examples of companies really kind of double down on their private fleets. Walmart is one, and I mentioned them earlier on the technology side, but Walmart is one that comes to mind, is really investing in their private fleet, and plenty of other examples throughout the industry. And of course, that also does make it tougher for the for hire market. But yes, that's very much in line with a lot of at least anecdotally, a lot of what we've discussed, and certainly some data to back that up, at least among the larger companies that we track for our top 100 private carriers report every year.
Yeah.
Uh,
So to continue with that thought about technology, whether it makes sense to buy more technology to be able to be more efficient. I think it's combination of two things. Some companies that have been out there, they try to create more efficiencies, but have failed, or they just ran out of money. So a lot of those companies have exited the space. Other companies, they were able to actually deliver a specific ROI, and we're one of those companies where we're able to deliver a more effective, more efficient workflow to our users, and therefore they're able to do a lot more without hiring more employees, or are able to actually
right.
cut on their staff and still process a large amount of freight. And so Yeah, it's very interesting to see what's happening in the market. But I have heard so many technology companies go out of business in the past 2 years. They just couldn't afford to stay in business anymore.
Yeah, it's certainly tough for technology companies as well. In a lot of cases, we've seen that tough market. Really for the whole transportation ecosystem in many
Yeah,
ways.
and we've actually grown in the toughest market ever. We've grown so much that we're kind of the envy of uh, a lot of technology companies in our space, right? And that's a testament to what we've done, and it actually speaks volumes about our workflows and what we've created actually works. And all the credit obviously goes to all of the people that work tirelessly around the clock to make this happen. And I'm very proud about our team when it comes to this.
Yeah. Well, Nick, we've certainly covered a lot of ground here. This has been a great conversation, but before I let you go, I'd love to hear maybe any final thoughts you might have about the future of TMS systems. What do you see uh, looking ahead, say 10 years from now? What do you think TMS technology will look like at that point?
So uh, one of the things that many software companies didn't understand properly what's happening on the front line, and as a result they built workflows that were not matching with the reality of the front lines. So one of those realities is being a hybrid operations. In logistics, in trucking, we always operate as a hybrid, um, I guess, um, a hybrid way of doing business. I'll give you an example. When you have enough freight, you're a carrier provider. You only have assets, and the shipper is really happy with you, and you have overflow freight. You definitely want to have the ability to be able to broker that out, but you're afraid to actually broker out the overflow freight because you're going to let the shipper down, and you're not going to take that freight. You're going to give it back. But if you had a proper platform that would have helped you operate, a brokerage arm at scale to a point where you could broker out just as efficiently as the big boys, then you would be able to take that overflow freight and therefore make more money. And that's the reality uh, in our market. Software companies have basically limited us. They either created something for a shipper, or a vertical for a carrier, right? Or a vertical just for drayage. And so you go on and on and on, and therefore what's happening in our space on the front line doesn't really match with how software companies build the workflows. So what we've done that's different, we created this architecture. We call it a hybrid architecture. You could be a freight broker, but at the same time, you could be a carrier, and you could have multiple P&Ls, and only one employee could process the shipments, whether you are a freight broker operating as a freight broker or as a carrier. And that was very important for us to distinguish. So when you look at all of these freight brokers that are registered on FMCSA, you'll realize that 90% of them are all carriers.
Mm-hmm.
And if 90% of them are all carriers, then why is it that the TMSs didn't figure out that the only way forward is to create a proper, robust hybrid architecture where you actually help those carriers operate efficiently, whether they are a carrier or a freight broker? Sometimes you could have one shipment, broker it out, and let's say the truck doesn't show up to the shipper, then you could take that shipment, put it back into your system or open status, and assign your own truck, and then your truck picks it up and breaks let's say breaks up midway. You could then take that same shipment with just one click and broker it out immediately. And everything has to be properly tracked. Every PN, I mean, the PNL has to be hit properly in the back end. So that's exactly what was required from a TMS provider to be able to match the frontline experience and not just create a niche market and then make everyone who's using your platform fit the workflows that were created by engineers. Am I making sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the broader commentary about the lines being blurred increasingly between carrier and broker certainly is the way that the market has shifted, right? I mean, it's increasingly you have to be at least partially both if you're a company of any size, and sometimes the most important decisions for the bottom line profitability is deciding which freight you're going to haul on your own assets and which you're going to broker out,
Absolutely.
and viewing that all comprehensively rather than a hard wall between the carrier and the broker side.
Yep. Yeah. So just to answer the question, what do I see 10 years from now? I believe if ATMS is to be successful, they have to be a hybrid architecture. That's the only way. We have to, as TMS providers, we need to actually understand what's happening on the front line and let us create processes and workflows that match the front line as opposed to sit in a focus group and ask specific questions from carriers. And the carrier will give you those answers. But sometimes when you ask the wrong question, you're just not going to get the right answers. So many times, let's say I'm going to tell you, hey, don't think about a pink elephant. You're already thinking about a pink elephant. Same thing with these questions. A lot of the feedback that's been taken from the front line is pegged on the wrong questions. The right questions are not asked. And so we tend to create these systems that doesn't really match the front line. And so what I think needs to happen, and that's what we're doing at Alvys, we try to understand what's actually happening on the front line. So instead of making these carriers, freight brokers, shippers, fit their ways into our workflows, we would actually deliver workflows that will empower the reality of the front line.
Yeah, for sure. No, it'll be fascinating to see how both the industry evolves and the technology market that serves it evolves in the years ahead. This has been a great conversation, but I think that's a good stopping point here, Nick. Thank you again for joining the podcast. I really appreciate your ideas, your insights, your expertise.
Thank you.
For the next segment of today's episode, I'm excited to bring in David Bell, co-founder and CEO of CloneOps. Welcome back to the podcast, David.
Thanks, Seth. Good to be here.
So today we've been discussing the evolution of transportation management systems and some of the changes that we're seeing in the TMS market. It includes a lot of new players that have entered the industry in recent years. David, I'd love to hear your take on how the TMS market has been changing and where you see it headed in the future.
That's a good question. I mean, they've been around for forever, as long as I can remember. I mean, when I was in the business in 1994 and 5, we were using a TMS. It just started. So but it's come a long way. I think that TMSs are going to get more and more involved with AI and automation. And I think the problem with TMSs in the whole industry is that there's so many of them, so many people do it so many different ways, and it's so fragmented. It's like hard to adopt one universal standard, and that's why you have so many TMSs. And so definitely think it still has a lot of room to evolve.
For sure. Now, David, you and I both attended the Manifest 2025 Supply Chain Technology Conference in Las Vegas. Of course, I've been going for 3 years now, and this is has become a pretty big event on the calendar for, call it 3PLs, shippers, certainly logistics technology vendors, a lot of startups, innovators, also a lot of investors wandering the halls at that show. Now that we've both had some time to kind of digest the show and think about our takeaways, what did you come away from that event with, and what were your top takeaways?
I mean, it was my first time doing the event. We've had representation there before at my previous companies. It's the first time I did it, so I was super impressed how big it was and how many people were there. And realized it's definitely more geared towards warehousing, supply chain than it is just pure brokerage. It's typical to some of the other conferences. I definitely like the idea of it being in Vegas. Allows us to get a lot of socializing in and dinners and happy hours, where most of the business I've always done at trade shows is, been at the happy hours or in the bars late at night. So, but that's, but Manifest, it was impressive, man. It was big. It was a lot of people. I think the content was great. I think that tons of AI, especially supply chain and robotics. So it was definitely a show we're going to be going big next year with. We're already in negotiations with them now to make it part of our big events with a couple other staples.
Yeah. And you mentioned AI, and kind of the running joke I was hearing throughout the show is it seems like every other sentence you would hear the term, AI would come up. And that really is, coming from all different elements of the show, right? I mean, that's from the exhibitors. A lot of the technology vendors at the show were focused on AI development and implementation. Now, of course, a lot of the panelists, a lot of the speakers, just sort of that. If you had to pick one theme, for the show, AI is probably it. That being said, would you say, do you agree with that? And beyond that, what were some of the other technology trends that maybe you saw in the exhibit hall or heard about in the panels and the sessions at Manifest? What are the top trends, technology trends?
I mean, AI is definitely a buzz. I think it's going to slow down a little bit. We've been developing AI, last eight months, and originally I thought it was going to go fast and we had to get there and catch up. But I'm finding out, the last 2 months, especially some of these trade shows, is that it's still in the infancy stages and evolving. And I think that a lot of people are looking at it and seeing where it's going to fit and what they're going to do with it, and they're definitely crawling before they walk or run with it. And it's particularly at the show, I think there was more geared towards warehouse robotics, drones, pick and pack robotics. I think that it was heavy there. I didn't see a ton of AI stuff geared towards the brokerage or trucking community, like we're building and we're doing. It's definitely more geared towards supply chain.
Yeah, for sure. I was surprised to see drones in the warehouse environment, such a big focus there as well. Um, and AI. I mean, I think that for sure it's very much at the peak of the hype cycle right now. I mean, it's AI everywhere. Really, maybe for the last year or two, it's felt that way, but really, it's dominating the conversation increasingly in our industry. But you're right. I mean, this is still early days. This is in the infancy phase right now, and developers are just starting to get into this. So we're not really at the point where we're going to see it transform the industry overnight. This is something where we're going to see over the course of years. This is going to be a trend that's going to drive the future of technology development. So it's good that we're having this conversation. It's great that we're all learning about AI and understanding it. I think it's going to be more and more important for any sort of manager at fleets and 3PLs and brokers to understand it and engage with it and think about it. Maybe you're not going to see that huge change overnight, but you'll be ready for it as more and more of it comes online. You start to see some of the capabilities increasingly make their way to the market. And oftentimes, we find that, to your point, if the hype starts to die down a little bit and maybe comes back down to earth, usually that's when you start to see the actual benefits, right? When the work is done, the developers have learned, from maybe missteps, and they've reached a point where they're ready to commercialize, and the early adopters are also learning from it. Then you start to really see the benefits. So sometimes when the hype is at the peak, that's just the beginning, and then if the hype is dying down, it doesn't mean that it's going away. It just means that we're getting to the phase where it's going to become more real and something that's ready to really be used across the industry. Is that about the way you see it playing out?
Yeah, I think also too, there's like this voice, what we're doing, the voice agent AI, I think is the buzz. Everybody wants to see how it's going to work, what it's going to do, because logistics and trucking is a high call volume business. You got truckers looking for loads and brokers looking for trucks, and you're doing it all. You're trying to do it all in a short period of time, to capture capacity or capture load volume. And I think the voice AI is the buzz, because there's been AI like for several years. There's been AI out there to do emails and load building and load entering. So people are doing that kind of already. Almost a lot of people I talk to already have a lot of these tools in place. And I think just the actual voice to see how that is going to perform and do, and and how they're going to adopt it and get value out of it, I think is what everybody wants to see. And I think they're going to see that in a pretty short period of time, in the next 3 to 5 months, and then see if it's going to work, if it's going to work well, which we believe it will. And basically how you tie it into the workflow. It's just another step in the process of a workflow.
Yeah.
That is necessary sometimes. And in logistics, like, we used to get every phone call was a pickup order. If you remember the old LTL days, which I go back to old school LTL, where you called the dispatch, gave them the pickup. They had a little Rolodex card. You gave them a lot. Now everything is evolved to email and load and tender and a EDI and API. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this new voice thing adopts and changes it to where maybe now it's the traditional paths through digital and email and all that, and then when there's a breakdown, then it's the voice agent is the second to final step, and then the human in the loop is the final step. So, but it's definitely to see it evolve over the last 30 years has been pretty cool. I wish I could go back 30 years and obviously know what I know now. That would be good. But,
Right. No, it is amazing how far we've come, but also be given just the number of manual processes that still exist, of course, in the transportation industry. There's a lot of opportunity here, and you're hitting on one of those opportunities to streamline and automate some of the processes and just be more efficient, right? Before I close our conversation on Manifest, perhaps I noticed personally a lot of these shows, some of the value just comes from the conversations you happen to have with people you pass in the hall, happen to sit next to at lunch, or happen to meet. I mean, you plan your meetings too, but any conversations that stood out to you at Manifest, and also any sort of industry buzz that stood out to you, or anecdotally anything that you're hearing about. The freight market, of course, is a big topic right now, and kind of hopeful. Folks are hopeful for at least a decent recovery, sometime this year, continuing through the year, and also just the outlook for the industry's technology sector, right? Because it's been a tough few years, for the whole industry. But any conversations or any buzz that really stood out to you from the show?
not anything really in particular. Everybody's obviously optimistic, and finally the election's behind us, and everybody's able to at least look forward 3 years and get some sort of perspective on what to expect. And I think it's been a rough 2 years for logistics. But if you go back 2 years before, there were a lot of brokers and digital brokers in the market that were doing gaining market share at -5, -10% margins, and basically losing money anyway. So I think if you talk to some of the bigger brokers, I think they took this opportunity to get profitable, to get EBITDA numbers, to clean up a little bit, put a bunch of the digital brokers that were moving loads at losses out of business. So I think it was, if I look back and then look forward, hopefully, everybody's, that survives, gets through it, and made them better. And we didn't waste a recession, don't waste a good recession, and made a lot of changes and improvements to make their business better, to make their business more profitable, more effective. And, I think if you're smart and you did that, and you use the last 2 years to, put yourself in a position to really be competitive and have a great business and great value to your business going forward, then you did the right thing. And I think a lot of the people did that. A lot of the bigger brokers and smart businessmen, I'm sure, did that, and businesswomen, and anybody in business looks at it. You just don't waste a good recession. Get something out of it. So I think that even though it was a tough 2 years, I think when people look back, they're going to be glad they went through the pain, because I think their business is going to be infinitely better because of it.
Yeah. Hopefully, there's been a lot of opportunity to learn, and some perspective that has come from this. And I actually think that's a great perspective to leave it on. So I'll go ahead and wind up there. Thanks again, David, for joining the podcast and sharing your insights. Always appreciate the chance to chat with you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Seth. Have a great weekend.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our original question. How are the latest advances in technology reshaping the TMS market? As we've heard during this episode, the emergence of cloud-based platforms, business process automation, data analytics, and AI are driving the future of information technology in the trucking industry. The hype cycle for AI right now is very much at the peak of inflated expectations, but the possibilities over time are virtually endless. In the coming years, we should expect to see TMS vendors increasingly invest in AI-enabled features and capabilities for their products, while at the same time integrating with an expanding ecosystem of tech vendors that are introducing a broad range of AI applications designed to improve efficiency and safety in the transportation industry. If you've enjoyed this episode of Road Signs, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with me and the Road Signs team. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. We'll read them and respond daily. Also, let us know how we did by texting TT Survey to 571-622-0001. And of course, we'll be back soon with a fresh episode of Road Signs. Until then, I'm Seth Clevenger. Thank you for listening.
Did you know you can ask Alexa to open Transport Topics? In just 1 minute, you will hear the biggest trucking headlines of that day. Be prepared and start your morning off right with Transport Topics.